A reminder about our prayer meeting, 5 o'clock. Please join us on site here and online if you can, so that we can be asking God to do the things that we can't do. I hope this morning's message will be a reminder to you of the importance of prayer. We've been working our way through Romans, and particularly Romans chapter 8, which is a chapter designed to give us hope, confidence, security, the sure confidence that whatever's happening in this world, glory will overtake us, and we'll be caught up in God's glory, and we will enjoy Him forever. And the pains of childbirth, as it were, we were looking at last week, the groanings and sufferings that often characterize this world, will soon be forgotten in the light of that great glory. That's what we looked at. But sometimes it gets so dark and so difficult and so confusing down here that we don't just need that encouragement that glory awaits and that finish line is there and we are going to attain to it. We also need the knowledge that God is with us in the present and things are going to work out all right in the present. And we have ever-present help to get us to glory. I mean, we can't just be living down here waiting to die. We've got work to do, and we've got to know that God is with us in the work. And in whatever circumstances are ever dark and difficult, God is with us and He's working out His purposes. We need to know that, and that's why the next passage of Romans 8 is there. And that's what we're going to look at. What is the distinguishing features? What are the key characteristics? What are the things that define our journey from here, wherever we find ourselves, to glory? And particularly we'll look at three of them. So 3 defining features of our pathway to glory. Romans chapter 8. We'll pick up from verse 23 just to get the context from last week, and then read through to verse 30. Romans chapter 8, verse 23. And not only the creation, but we ourselves, who have the first fruits of the Spirit, groan inwardly as we wait eagerly for our adoption as sons, the redemption of our bodies. For in this hope we were saved. Now hope that is seen is not hope. Who hopes for what he sees? But if we hope for what we do not see, we wait for it with patience. Likewise, the Spirit helps us in our weakness. For we do not know what to pray for as we ought. But the Spirit Himself intercedes for us with groanings too deep for words. And He who searches hearts knows what is the mind of the Spirit, because the Spirit intercedes for the saints according to the will of God. And we know that for those who love God, all things work together for good, for those who are called according to His purpose. For those whom He foreknew, He also predestined to be conformed to the image of His Son, in order that He might be the firstborn among many brothers. And those whom He predestined, He also called. Those whom He called, He also justified. And those whom He justified, He also glorified. So 3 defining features or 3 key characteristics of our pathway to glory. What is it going to look like? What do we need to embrace and realize is true of every step, every event, every circumstance, every detail of our lives from here until glory? First, profound weakness in verse 26. Second, perfect intercession in verse 26 and 27. And thirdly, providential circumstances in verse 28 and 29. So firstly, profound weakness. Verse 26 begins, likewise, the Spirit helps us in our weakness. Likewise, meaning in like manner or in the same way. And it says this paragraph is closely connected to the previous one. Now, some people see the connection in the groaning, in the same way that all creation groans in verse 22 and believers groan in verse 23. So the Spirit groans in verse 26. Even though the word is repeated, I don't think that's the main intention of the paragraph and the main connection here. The whole emphasis of the previous paragraph, of this paragraph, and the whole of chapter 8 is on what God is doing to give us confidence. The emphasis is not on the groaning. The emphasis is on the hope, the unshakable confidence that we have in the present. And so I think the right way to understand verse 26 is it's saying this: in the same way that our knowledge of future glory, which is what he's just been covering in the previous paragraph, in the same way that knowledge that future glory is ours helps us and encourages us and gives us hope in our present struggle and in our present suffering, so the Spirit himself comes alongside us and helps us in our present weakness. That, I think, is the connection. And so the Greek word there for help begins with the preposition soon, or with, together with. He comes alongside with us, together with us. So the idea is that the Spirit enters into our struggle. He enters into our groaning. He enters into our weakness and our suffering. And He comes alongside us to help us, to assist us, to bear the load. That's the idea. We have a divine assistant, an all-powerful, all-loving, all-knowing, ever-present assistance to give us all the help we need. And the point is, we need help. We need help, and we have all the help that we need through the ministry of the Holy Spirit. This is picking up on a theme which has been throughout chapter 8, which I hope you didn't miss, and is actually key to the whole message of the gospel that Paul's been unfolding in the letter to the Romans. We are weak, but God is strong. We are unfaithful, but God is faithful. We are unable, but God is able. We are overwhelmed, but the gospel. God gives us what we don't have and don't deserve. That's what it's all been about. And chapter 8 really brings that to its climax. Chapter 8, verse 1. We are guilty, but there's no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. Chapter 8, verse 3. The flesh is weak, but God has done what the law, weakened by the flesh, could not do by sending His own Son in the likeness of sinful flesh. God has done what we couldn't do, weakened as we are, and the law couldn't do, weak as it is, because of our flesh. Verse 4, we are unrighteous, but the righteous requirements of the law will ultimately be fulfilled in us who walk not according to the flesh, but according to the Spirit. In this war of flesh and spirit, the Spirit triumphs over the flesh. Verses 11, our bodies are perishing, but the Spirit of Him who raised Jesus from the dead dwells in you, and He who raised Christ Jesus from the dead will give life to your mortal bodies. Verses 15, we are fearful and unworthy, but we didn't receive this spirit of slavery to fall back into fear, but the spirit of adoption. And He moves us to be able to cry out to our Abba and Father, Lord, help, and receive the help that we need. Verses 17, we deserve nothing and have nothing, but God has made us fellow heirs with Jesus Christ. Verse 18, we suffer and groan in a fallen world, but despite present sufferings, the glory of God is going to overtake us, and these sufferings are not worth comparing to that glory that will overtake us in Christ Jesus. Verse 23, we are groaning and struggling deeply, but God has provided for the redemption. We are waiting for the redemption of our bodies, the adoption as sons. Verse 31, there's so much against us, but God is for us. Verse 36 and 37, we are weak. For your sake we are being killed all the day long. We are regarded as sheep to be slaughtered. We're just weak and lost and unable, and we've been killed all the day long. But, verse 37, in all these things we are more than conquerors through Him who loved us. So we as Christians of all people should understand that God has not made us to be strong in ourselves. We are not strong. We are weak. We are not faithful. We are faithless. We are not great. We are small. And we shouldn't feel great, and we shouldn't feel powerful, and we shouldn't feel able, because that's not who we are and what we are. But in the gospel, in Jesus Christ, God gives us everything we need. God is everything we need. We are profoundly weak. But the good news is God gives us everything we need. And so essentially, the Christian life is a life lived in personal weakness, in personal difficulty, in personal struggle, which forces us to reach out, to cry out, to have to depend on God all the time to give us what we don't have but desperately need. That's what the Christian life is. It's a constant crying out, Abba, Father, and we can cry out to Him because of the ministry of the Spirit, and we can receive from Him. If prayer doesn't characterize your life as a Christian, you haven't yet come to terms with your profound weakness and God's incredible power. You see, we don't pray because we think we are strong and God is weak. Because we think we've got it handled, and what is God really going to do? And we've got it completely on our heads. And our predicament goes even beyond that. Even when we finally recognize that I need God and I need Him to intervene, and we finally reach out, we are so ignorant of what we really need. We're so ignorant of what's really going on. We're so lacking in understanding of what God's will really is that when we do finally ask of God, we ask amiss. We ask wrongly. That's what James 4 actually says in verses 1 to 4. It says we've got these strong desires at war within us, and we'll fight and desire and try and pursue these things desperately because we believe we need them, and we do not have because we do not ask. That's what James says. And when we do finally ask, we don't receive what we've asked because we've asked wrongly, so that we might just spend it on our passions, fulfill these passions which are idolatrous and misguided desires in the first place. We are children who are constantly asking for sweets rather than for a healthy meal. We constantly want God to make us happy rather than healthy. We are wanting God to give us what is easy rather than what is best. We want comfort rather than character. We want to be motivated by what is temporal and what is going to pass away rather than what is eternal and weighty. This is our problem. Just think about this for a moment. We, for the most part, are in desperate trouble and desperately weak and unable and completely overwhelmed, and we don't even realize the danger we're in. We don't even realize the weakness we're in. And we've got, power available for our weakness. The most powerful means of moving, the most powerful being in the universe lies largely unused on our pillow next to us or under our bed. Right? And we're trying to get rid of a forest of problems with a nail file that we have in our hand, when the chainsaw is there that God has provided. And then when we finally do realize, this is a chainsaw, this is made for chopping down trees, and Glenn came and helped me on this week, and I saw how effective that thing is. We pick up this chainsaw and we start using it like a shovel. We don't turn the thing on and use it like it should. We start shoveling at the dirt at the bottom of the tree. That's what he's getting at here. And it's not just a joke, it's serious. Just think about this. Sometimes life gets so overwhelming and so difficult that you don't even feel that you're able to pray. You don't even feel like you want to pray. And if you do manage to find out to get some sort of prayer together, you pray with such feeble faith and you're not even sure what you should be praying for. You don't even know what to ask for because you don't even know what God is doing or what should be accomplished here. God has that covered. God even has that scenario covered. That's His point. We desperately need His power, and He knows just how weak and ignorant we are. So profound weakness. Second, perfect intercession. perfect intercession. It says, the Spirit comes alongside us and helps us in our weakness. We do not even know what we ought to pray for as we ought, but the Spirit Himself intercedes with us with groanings too deep for words. And the Himself is emphatic there. He Himself comes and intercedes for us. God has this scenario covered because He understands our weakness. And we are delving here into the depths of the Trinity. It's like God understands these people. If I have to wait for them to realize how important it is to pray, and then get all their motives straightened out and get all their theology straightened out so they'll pray for the right things at the right time in the right way, it's going to be a case of too little, too late. So God Himself provides a means for us by which His will can be accomplished in our lives. God, the Godhead, God eternally existing in three persons, equally and fully divine, one in essence and character and purpose, but three persons. I don't think we're ever going to understand this. I don't think we'll fully grasp this mystery, but we can understand this. When God the Father and God the Son and God the Spirit agree together that something needs to be accomplished in our life, you better believe it will be done. That's what we have here. We have God the Spirit, God the Father providing God the Spirit, who will come alongside and intercede and say, this is what is needed. And this is according to your will. May your will be done. A lot of charismatics use this passage to support a personal prayer life that they have. In many cases, they supplement their prayer life or sometimes even completely replace their prayer life with this, what they would call praying in the Spirit, praying in different kinds of tongues and groanings. And from conversations I've had, they themselves don't even understand what they're saying. But they point to this passage and they say, that's what's happening. I don't think that's prayer. Because if we don't even know what we're asking for, we're not asking. I think that's just mumbling and jumbling. It's exactly the kind of thing the Gentiles engaged in, and Jesus said we shouldn't do in Matthew 6. We should come to our Father in heaven and ask for specific needs, our daily needs that we need. I don't think that's the intention of this passage, and there's three reasons I want to give you for that. I mean, if an argument is going to be made for this kind of praying in tongues, a personal prayer language, I think it's better to go to 1 Corinthians 14 and try and make the argument there than to import it here. Because when we import it here, we undermine the real encouragement and meaning of this passage. And this is why I think so. The passage here is about the intercession of the Spirit. It says He Himself intercedes for us. It's about what He's doing, not about what we're doing. In fact, the whole of Romans 8 is all about what God is doing. It's all the hope that we can have because all of that God does for us, without us, despite us. That's the whole emphasis. And at the end there, verse 26, when it says, He intercedes for us with groanings too deep for words. That's how the ESV translates it. The Greek word for speaking is laleo, to speak or to make a sound or an utterance. And yeah, when it says He groans, so He intercedes with groanings too deep for words, that is alaleo. So it's saying no sound, no words, no utterance. The prefix makes it the opposite. Just like in English, when you've got belief and you add a prefix disbelief, it's the opposite of belief. And so this is the opposite of speaking or making a sound. It's a wordless intercession. That would be the most natural way to understand this word. It's an inaudible prayer. It's a prayer between God the Father and God the Spirit that we're not even privy to and we're no part of. And the third reason why I say I don't think it's a private prayer language that is in view here is throughout chapter 8, it's been telling us about what God is doing for every single believer so that we can have a sure hope. But we are told in 1 Corinthians 12:30 that not all speak in tongues. And we know that to be a fact. And so if this is what God is meaning, then this is the only thing in all of chapter 8 that only applies to a certain select group of individuals. It doesn't make sense. Everything here is about what God is doing for all of His children. And so I think what is meant here is something greater than any spiritual gift or all the spiritual gifts combined. And we rob ourselves of the real hope and intention of this passage when we limit it to some sort of prayer language that I need to engage in and seek. People can get so hung up on the language here that they miss what is clearly the main point. Verse 26 and 27, he says, He intercedes for us with groanings too deep for words, and He who searches hearts knows what is the mind of the Spirit, because the Spirit intercedes for the saints according to God's will. It's saying that the Spirit enters into our groaning and our suffering and our struggling, and He understands the deepest longings of our hearts. He understands what we really desire if we would understand everything rightly. And He also, being God, perfectly understands and plumbs the depths of God's mind and purpose and will and plan. And He takes these two things and He brings them together in a prayer so perfect, so eloquent, that no words could properly express this. And He presents it to God on your behalf as the perfect reconciliation of what He knows is in your heart and what you truly desire and need and what is God's plan and purpose. And God the Father knows exactly what the Spirit is doing, because God who searches hearts knows your heart. He knows who you are. He knows what you need. And He knows what the Spirit's doing and why He put Him there. And therefore that prayer never goes unanswered. That is much more amazing than some prayer language. The Spirit is given to every child of God so that He can take what you desire and what you will and reinterpret it perfectly according to God's will. And then express that to God in the most perfect, continual, personal prayer on your behalf, so that what He asks of the Father is always done. Now you think about that for a moment. When you're really struggling, when you're struggling so much that you don't even know if you can pray for yourself, and you ask for someone and you mean it, just pray for me. Just pray for me, because I think you're going to do a better job at this point than me. I don't even know if I can pray rightly here, because I don't even know if I want to do God's will in this scenario. Right? And you ask someone, and you know the encouragement it is when you know someone who's maybe in a better condition spiritually than you at that point is going to bring up your need to the throne of God and present it there before God. And some of you know in your personal experience what it's like to be carried along by that prayer, where you just sense a power coming over you and working in your context and your situations that you know is not coming from you. Someone is carrying you along in prayer. Now, in reality, you know, when you go and ask someone, please pray for me, they might forget. They might not pray with the right motive. They might not understand what you really need. And so they might pray amiss, but not God, the Holy Spirit. Without your asking, He knows and plumbs the depths of your heart, and He intercedes on your behalf. And His intercession is always perfectly effective before the Father. And that's why verse 28 can say, and we know that for those who love God, all things work together. Do you notice that? It's and we know. So this is not therefore we know. It's not that close a connection. But it's not full stop, new thought. That's not it. It's and we know. It's a continuation of what He's just saying. In other words, He's saying we know this intercession, this ministry of the Holy Spirit, this passional, personal, perfect prayer life that's that God is undertaking on our behalf, we know that's happening, and we know it's effective, and therefore we can know that everything is working together for our good. 3 defining features of our pathway to glory: profound weakness, perfect intercession, and the third one really flows because of this ministry. It's connected to this. He's interceding, and we know God's will has been accomplished in everything, and God's will is good. Providential circumstances, verse 28 and 29. It says there, and we know that for those who love God, all things work together for good, for those who've been called according to His purpose. For those whom He foreknew, He predestined to be conformed to the image of His Son, in order that He might be the firstborn among many brothers. Next week I want to unpack these milestones, as it were, this unbreakable chain that unfolds. This morning I just want to get to the main idea here. There's 3 key ideas that are rolled up in this affirmation. 1, God is working. 2, His work encompasses all things. And 3, it's for our ultimate good. I just want to touch on each of those before we delve into the details, as it were, and understand what is the good and how is He working and so on. Here's the first one. God is working. We know that in all things God works. Some translations say that God is working everything together for good. The main idea is the same. It's clear. God is working. God is planning. God is purposing all things that are happening. Things aren't happening because of random chance, or because of fate, or because of people's decisions, or because of Satan's schemes. Right? Satan's scheming, people are planning, people are making decisions, events are happening which seem to be random and vast and beyond any human control, and all of that's true. But behind all of that stands the God who's sovereign over everything. And behind all of that, His will and His plan and His purpose has been accomplished in everything. Everything, that's the second key word here. In everything. Every single thing. Nothing is excluded here. Nothing is overlooked. Nothing lies outside the scope when it draws a circle and says, God has all of this covered. It includes everything inside, nothing outside. The third term, for our good. God is good, and He's the sum of all good. So He's not just working all things towards some random purpose or some general good. Notice there what it says. In all things God is working together for good, for the good of those who love God. We are called according to His purpose. For the good of those who are in this covenant relationship. And I'll expand on this more next week. But you've got to understand this good is not just general. Not just the good of the country or the good of the world or the good of God's redemption plan. You've got to understand that this good is very, very specific and very personal for the good of those who love God, whom He loved, whom He foreknew, whom He loved before the creation of the world. When God's working out good, He's got your name written on it if you are in Jesus Christ. And somehow all that good that He's planned for each one of His children comes together into a wonderful, glorious good, which we can't always see today. The good here, however, is explained in verse 29, that we might be conformed to the image of His Son. As you think about it being personal and specific, don't think about it being comfort alone, or relief alone, or material blessings alone, or pleasure alone. That's not the good that God has in mind. It's far greater than that. Wherever you find yourself, in whatever circumstances, whether it be because of your own sin, or the sin of another person, or your own foolishness, or the foolish of another person, or some political leader and the decisions that they've made, or because of some immaterial spiritual warfare that's going on that you don't even understand and aren't privy to, or because of some seeming force of nature that has come and overtaken your life and your circumstances, which you can explain or not. Everything is exactly as it's meant to be for now. You can look at every single detail of your life and put everything into that and say everything is as it's meant to be for now, for my eternal good. I can't tell you what a comfort that is when life gets confusing. If you can just go, sometimes I have to stop and tell myself that over and over again, because that has to be the starting point. You have to embrace everything. Sometimes I've taken myself down a pathway and I find myself where I shouldn't be. And it's all my fault. And I have to remind myself, even though that is true and it in no way excuses the many foolish or sinful choices I've made, even though that's true, where I find myself is exactly where I'm meant to be for what God wants to do in my life, to conform me to the image of His Son. You have to start there when life gets confusing. You have to understand how big God is and how big His grace and His love and His mercy is, and how powerfully and specifically it's directed towards you personally. You know, they can't even really count the stars in the universe. That means that even mathematicians can't apply their maths to get to a figure. Some astronomers have estimated our Milky Way galaxy alone contains about 300 billion stars. So if you had to count one star a second in our galaxy alone, it would take you 9,506 years. There are at least 200 billion galaxies in the known universe. At least. Psalm 147 says, He determined the number of stars and He gives to all of them their names. God gives names to what we can't even number. Isaiah 40:26 says, Lift up your eyes on high and see, who created these? He who brings out their host by number, calling them all by name, by the greatness of His might, and because He is strong in power, not one is missing. Not one star fails to come and occupy its position and take its place in God's grand scheme of what He's planning and purposing. Not one is missing. Everyone is upheld to accomplish exactly what God intends. The stars that we can't even count. Psalm 145 verse 15 and 16 says, The eyes of all look to you, and you give them their food in due season. You open your hand, and you satisfy the desire of every living thing. Scientists estimate that there's 8.7 million different species on Earth. Species. 80% of those haven't yet been discovered and described properly. God has put more creatures on Earth than we will ever be able to discover or count. Estimated 10,000 trillion ants alone. More stars than in our galaxy. Ants alone. So when Psalm 145 says, you open your hand and you satisfy the desire of every living thing, right? They can't even estimate properly what is entailed in that. Some estimates say 20 quintillion. That's 20 billion billion. Which means that if we were to count every living thing at one thing per second, it would take 600 million millennia to count them all. And God says every single day, every one of those creatures looks to God to open His hand and satisfy and sustain. God is trying to communicate something to us. Look up. Look out. Look what He's doing. Look at your own life. Jesus said in Luke 12:6, Are not 5 sparrows sold for 2 pennies? Not one of them is forgotten before God. Why, even the hair of the 100,000 hairs, they estimate, of your head are numbered. Fear not, you are of more value than many sparrows. Just turn for a moment to Psalm 139. Psalm 139. Verses 1, Psalm 139, verse 1. Lord, you have searched me, and you know me. You know when I sit down and when I rise up. You discern my thoughts from afar. When you know everything about me, Lord, when my thoughts are still being formed, that I'm becoming aware of what I'm thinking, you already know them. Verse 3 and 4, you search out my path and my lying down. You're acquainted with all my ways, everything I'm doing. Even before a word is on my tongue, behold, O Lord, you know it all together. When I haven't yet quite formed the words on my tongue already, you know what I'm about to say. Verse 5, you hem me in behind and before, and you lay your hand upon me. You like this shield that's around about me on every side, even though I can't see it. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me. It's high, I cannot attain it. Verse 7, where shall I go from your spirit? Where shall I flee from your presence? If I ascend to heaven, it's not that you'll get there, you're there. If I make my bed in Sheol, you're there. If I take my wings on the morning and dwell in the uttermost parts of the sea, if I'm running from you, no matter where I run to and where I try and hide and how far I try to get, you're there. Even there, your hand shall lead me, verse 10, and your right hand shall hold me. You're not just there watching. You're not just there spectating. You're not just happening to be there. There, you're working for my good. Your hand is leading me and guiding me and upholding me and strengthening me. You're there to do me good. That's what the psalm is saying. If I say, surely darkness shall cover me, and the light about me be night, even the darkness is not dark to you, and the night is bright as the day. Darkness is as light to you. You formed my inward parts. You knitted me together in my mother's womb. I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. You, my Creator, you made me exactly as you intended. You know every cell and every strand of DNA, every characteristic that you built into who I am. I praise you, for I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. Verse 14, wonderful are your works. My soul knows it well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was being made in secret, intricately woven in the depths of the earth. Your eyes saw my unformed substance, and in your book were written, every one of them, the days that were formed for me, when as yet there was none of them. Every single day that I would live, and the last day that I would live, you already wrote down and ordained and knew fully before I even emerged from the womb. God is trying to communicate something. When He says all things work together for good, He means all things. And He means your good, your eternal good. And He's provided ample means for us to believe what He says. This text is not calling for us to understand. It's saying that absolutely every single thing in your life is playing according to God's tune. And somewhere, somehow, the cacophony, the confusion that you're currently hearing is going to emerge and become a wonderful orchestra when you can finally put it all together. It's not calling for us to understand. It's not calling for us to be able to make sense of what we see around us, of every individual event. It's not calling for us to be able to discern God's will. It's calling for us to trust and believe. To believe what He says when He says, everything, my child, is working for your good. Profound weakness is what characterizes the Christian life. But perfect intercession, that more than makes up for our profound weakness, so that we can know in everything, general and specific, in every part and every detail, everything is working together for your good. So let me leave you with this illustration and use your imagination a bit. Imagine you are in love and your suitor decides that he's going to plan a very special day when he is going to confirm his love for you. And He's going to ask you that big question. Do you want to spend the rest of your life with me? And He is thinking about this thing, and He wants it to be the most special day ever. And He's planning all the details, and He's got a bunch of other friends and resources around, and He's worked everything. So on that day, you kind of wake up, and He's arranged with your boss that you'll be called out to a certain place, and your friends will meet you in certain things. And this whole thing is directing you along towards a goal, right? A predetermined plan and end. And along the way in that day, you plan to kind of do your hair, and you maybe plan to do some washing, and now, you get this call from your boss, and things are just not going according to your plan. And, your friend comes around, and then they got some weird story, and you just feel a little bit confused about the way things are unfolding today. Is not at all according to the way you thought it should be. And it seems like your day is going all pear-shaped, right? And what's happening here? I feel like I'm losing control of my day. Until finally, it emerges over the sunset, an African sunset, in the bush. And the fire's going. And your beloved turns your head towards you. And he says, I love you. And I want to spend eternity with you. And suddenly, the whole day makes sense. Suddenly, everything falls into place. That's what Romans 8 is saying. Our beloved Father has planned an eternity with us. And one day He will turn our head towards us. And we will see that everything that worked out was climaxing in this moment where He turns our head towards us and say, I love you. And I planned and purposed to spend all eternity with you.